This is the regular meeting of the Kaneland District 302 School Board. We'd like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. This meeting is open to the public in accordance with guidance issued by the Office of the Governor of Illinois, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and the Illinois State Board of Education. Individuals are required to wear an approved face covering properly over their nose and mouth at all times while in the building, including during the meeting and when speaking at the microphone. And as we've done in the past, if we look out and we see that there are people not wearing masks, we'll take a quick recess and let everyone reset. And if that doesn't work, if it continues, we will adjourn and hold the meeting virtually at a later date. So all that being said, if we could rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mrs. Junk is absent tonight.
Okay. With 6 members present, we have a quorum. Do any board members wish to move anything from the consent agenda to new business? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward with the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented tonight.
So moved. Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Now at Board Superintendent Salutes, I'll turn it over to Dr. Layton.
Yes, thank you. As we continue our introduction of new staff members throughout the district, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Atkins, and he can do a brief intro, and we'll meet our new staff members from Harder.
Thank you. We have been very blessed this year to bring on 2 new middle school staff members, both in the special education department. So I will let Mr. Schmidt introduce them, and we can welcome them.
All right, good evening. I'm very pleased to present to you our Harder Middle School new staff members for the 21-22 school year. First up is Terry Wilkinson, who unfortunately could not be here this evening because of a coaching responsibility. Mr. Wilkinson, as Dr. Atkins stated, is an 8th grade special education teacher. When his students are asked to tell what things they like best about him, I was told he helps me in math, he breaks down the math things, and he teaches well. And when I asked for one word to describe him, funny and nice were the 2 most common words. Next up is Steve Ostergaard, who is a 7th grade special education teacher. When his students are asked to tell what they like best about him, I was told he tries getting us back on track, he helps us work step by step, and he's a Bears and Cubs fan. When I asked for one word to describe him, helpful was the most common response. And then lastly but not least is our, I'd like to introduce Jessica Weichert, who is our new district ELL coordinator. We're so grateful to have her in the district and also housed primarily here at Harder.
I just wanted to personally thank you. This is the first school district that I've worked in that has given new staff the opportunity to come and introduce ourselves and see all of you in person. So thank you. It's very much appreciated.
Kind of echoing what Jessica said, is this is the first district I've gotten to work in that has invited us to come and get to see your guys' faces and put names to faces, so I really do appreciate that. It's been a great school year so far. I feel as if Nathan's done a great job, the administration's done a great job handling whatever we want to call this new normal is. And I really I've enjoyed my time here immensely so far, and I can't wait for more.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Thank you. Great to see you here tonight. As we transition to the next part of the meeting, excellent. If it's time to go, you take off now. You're welcome to stay, but have a great rest of your evening. The next thing, at our next meeting in December, our only meeting in December, we will have our athletics and activities from middle school and high school. While we won't be able to have all the students here, we will have reports from both grade levels or grade spans at our next meeting. We always look forward to hearing those highlights, so they'll be coming at the next meeting. And that was all I had for salutes tonight.
Okay. Dr. Fuchs?
I don't have any, thank you.
On that point of athletics, I wanted to, speaking as a longtime volleyball coach, I wanted to congratulate the Kaneland girls on a regional championship, which is really, given the quality of competition around here, that's really saying something. I've coached both here and down in New Mexico, and congratulations, ladies. That one, and actually put up a really good fight against the eventual champion in the sectional,
Yes.
Mattia Valley, wasn't it? So, yeah, congratulations.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move forward now. This is the first opportunity for public comment. There are normally two in the meeting, one at the beginning and one at the end. The board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into a debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone. State your name and the village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less and 1 comment per session, so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. And we do have one person signed up for the first session, and that is Tony Grosinger.
Hi, everybody. Tonya Grosinger from Maple Park. I just wanted to let you all know, just for full transparency, kind of some of the things going on in some of our schools for like COVID mitigations and stuff. I had a parent reach out to me the week before Thanksgiving break. Her daughter was a close contact on Wednesday. Thursday afternoon around 1 p.m., she got a phone call from the principal of her daughter's school that she was a close contact. My friend asked, do I need to come get her? They said, no, she can finish out the day. We'll send her home on the bus. All's good there. She can come in. I'll send the paperwork for the Test to Stay program. She can come in the morning, bring her on the bus or whatever. My friend's husband actually took their daughter in. She was nervous about the test. The principal of that school said that it was going to be a cheek swab. It was not. It was the nose swab. But she did not have the test done until later on in the day. So she went to class with everybody where she could have, potentially exposed. Remember, we're all wearing these masks because it's to keep everybody safe, but a close contact can go to class for 2, 3, 4 hours before they're even tested. I'm really trying to make sense of all of that. Another one called me today saying that their oldest was COVID positive on the 15th or so. Sent home, siblings sent home, all was good. Everybody went back to school today. Today was like day 13, 14 or whatever. 2 of the kids that did not have COVID were sent to the nurse's office, where the nurse then called the parents to come pick up the kids because they needed their 14 days. I was under the impression from the entire beginning of the school year that it was 10 days. If you had no symptoms and everything was good, 10 days you can go back. That's what we've been told. That's what all the emails say. That's what everything says. The parent even talked to the King County Health Department. They said it was not a non-issue as well. So I'm really just trying to understand. You want all of us to to just hop on board and be okay with everything, the masks, the social distancing, the lack of socialization, the way our kids are being taught, and it's, going downhill. They're struggling in the classes, and yet we're going to do a test to stay, but you don't have to test until, 3 hours into class. Or we're going to say, okay, the health department says 10 days for quarantine, but no, wait, for you, it's 14 days. Make it make sense, guys. None of this makes sense. I understand mistakes happen and stuff, but it's happening way too much. And I just wanted all of you to be aware of what is going on. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. We don't have anyone else signed up, but if someone would like to speak, they can. Okay.
My name is Katie Maxwell, and I'm here again because I'm frustrated. I'm very frustrated with the district's lack of concern for our kids attending our schools. At what point are our kids enough? I've pointed out in several previous board meetings that it's clear to many that it's the funding that you receive that is driving your decisions. Again, at what point will the children in this district be enough? They should be your first priority. When parents or community members come to these meetings and address their concerns, it seems to fall on deaf ears. Doesn't matter what side of the spectrum we speak, we never get a response. Now, I understand you can't respond, I get that, but do you discuss this afterwards? Do you guys talk about anything that we discuss, any of our concerns? Many, including myself, have spoken multiple times regarding the continued masking of our children. We've provided you with the facts. They are breeding grounds for bacteria. Kids are inhaling carbon dioxide, which I'm assuming you know is not safe, because I've pointed that out in previous meetings as well. You're also allowing this to be done to our kids. You fall back on ISB and Illinois Department of Public Health, clearly your go-to, your scapegoat. If you hadn't noticed, many districts, close to about 145 to be exact, along with several states, have decided enough is enough. I've also informed you of schools that have won temporary restraining orders that have gone mask optional and provided you with their numbers, which significantly decreased. Carlisle School District, when they were mask required, they had 137 cases in 1 month in their district. It went down to 8 in 1 month. Hillsborough had 57. It went down to 11. Teutopolis had 1 staff member and 1 student. St. Anthony had 0 cases in the month of November. Do you see a pattern here? You're covering our children's faces. It decreases their immune systems, and it's abusive. They are more susceptible to getting the common cold or flu, which, believe it or not, still exist. These other districts are giving their parents a choice, and the numbers are proof, and the immune system is proving it was a good decision. The Illinois Association of School Boards is leaving the National School Boards Association. Districts and associations are waking up and standing up, yet we're not. We are now even letting our kids ride in the school bus with the windows down because IDPH told you to. Are you kidding me? Apparently our district and a few select others are the only districts that hang on their every word or demand that they offer or issue. Our district is in serious trouble. The decisions you make for this community and our children regarding masks, COVID testing, standard-based grading, CRT equity, the list goes on, just proves once again it's not about anything other than the funding. I'm not sure if you realize this or not, but Illinois is one of four states that have a mask mandate. That should be a red flag. Something is not right in our state and with ISB. And I ask you to look inside yourself, and I ask you if any of these forced issues seem normal to you. If you cannot see that something is clearly wrong, then God help you. I pray our district wakes up and decides to actually represent the community it serves and focuses on actually educating our children.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other public comments tonight? Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move on now. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items: the approval of accounts payable and payroll for November 2021, the approval of minutes of the November 8th, 2021 regular meeting, the approval of resignations, terminations, and employment of staff, the approval of the 2020-2021 audit reports for Fox Valley Career Center and Kaneland District 302, the approval of the 2022-2023 capital projects, and the following informational item, the student suspension data report. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Moving on now to new business. The first item on new business is the budget update and planning for 2022-2023.
Yep, I'll turn that over to Dr. Fuchs, and she can provide a little more clarity and updates from what was in the board memo.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it. This memo and topic is in preparation for the next board meeting. I anticipate at the next board meeting having the 5-year financial projections ready. In order to get them ready, I wanted to get the board ready with some background knowledge, and then that way when we get to next board meeting and I have the presentation, you'll be more familiar with what to expect, particularly for our newer board members. So the first thing that I wanted to show you and to share with you is some information from the 2021 budget. That's last year. If you'll turn in your packet to the second to the last page, there's a page with a table and it's landscaped instead of portrait. I just want to make sure that everybody knows how to read this page and if you have any questions on it. So in school district budgeting, we budget for revenues, we budget for expenditures separate from revenues, and then at the end, you figure out actual revenues over actual expenditures or vice versa. What this chart shows you, or table shows you, are the last 4 years worth of data. So the first horizontal rows are budgeted revenues to actual revenues. And you can see over the last 4 years, the 4-year average is 100.85. That means that we've had 0.85% more revenue than what was budgeted over those 4 years. So that's where you would normally want to be. The second set of rows is the budgeted expenditures to actual expenditures. Similarly, on this one, you'll see that we have 96 4-year average, 96.94%. What that means is that we budget for 100%, and over 4 years, we spent about 97% of our revenues. Then the question is revenues, actual revenues to actual expenditures. With that, you can see for 3 years, FY 18, 19, and 20, we actually added to our fund balance. And then in 21 was the first year in a little while where we came in slightly under, and it was just about 270,000 expenditures over revenues. So you can see what our past has been and what the averages are for those 4 years. Are there any questions for that information?
No, but for next week, or next meeting, could you add to your information that you give us all of the grants? And I know there's been several large dollar figures that are coming into the district that aren't annual. So if you could give us that information, please.
Absolutely. And you're looking at knowing what the new ones are, right?
Right, and I think there was a few million for,
Yep, and then the technology one.
right, and so I'd like to know when those are coming in and how long they last for, or how long we have.
And how much and what we're doing with them.
And how long we have to spend them.
Yep,
Please.
I absolutely, and you want to know the timelines. Okay, thank you. Very helpful, and I'll be prepared for that.
Thank you.
Yep. The next paragraph or topic on that first page has to do with the last page of the report. The last page of the report is for this current fiscal year. Again, this is a document that you will see a portion of it every month on the treasurer's report. We typically focus on the operating dollars. This report reports all of your district funds, not just operating dollars. And this report is this year as of October 31. Please remember our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30th. And so we should be about a third of the way through. With regard to operating revenues, you can see year to date, we've received 83.25%. Last year at this time, it was very similar. It was 81.8%, so very close. If you skip down to the center section, you can look at your operating expenditures. Again, that is very similar as well. We are at 5%, and last year at this time, we were at 35%. So again, we're in relatively same position that we were last year, nothing significantly different. You can see in the bottom section, we have the fund balance. You can see that it has grown by about 2 million there, and that simply has to do with the additional tax money that you get early in the fiscal year, and then you spend it down.
Say that again, please.
Yep. So in the, I'd call it the third section, the fund balance section
Okay.
for the operating funds. You'll notice last year at this time, our fund balance was 43 million. This year it's running about 45 million. And that has to do with the fact that we received additional tax money this year. And if you'll remember, our tax money comes early. We get it in June and September. So it's sitting in our accounts. And then we will spend it down with our expenditures throughout the fiscal year.
All right, so that doesn't mean we have an extra $3 million that's unbudgeted. We already have plans for that monies.
Correct.
Okay.
In fact, right now, if you look at your budgeted, your operating budget, you can see the operating expenditures are at 65.7, and your operating revenues are at 64.2. So we've got, you know, a projected deficit, but I already know that we're not going to have that big of a deficit because of some of the additional revenues that we learned about after the budget was done.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on that page? Okay, so then back to planning for the 22-23 budget year. So I use software by Forecast 5. We've used it for several years. In that software, I have to put in a variety of assumptions. And I'll review this again next week, okay? Just probably a little bit more quickly. First of all, we start with this year's budget and assuming that it's accurate. At this point in time, that's all we've got. From there, we build the next year's budget using assumptions. These assumptions that I put in there, they can be shifted and manipulated. Right now, it's built on a lot of unknowns, but as we continue through the fiscal year, we'll learn things, and then I can update the financial projections and continue to give the board updates along the way. There are several revenue assumptions that we'll use. One of them is CPI. That's a significant portion of the tax levy process. For each of these assumptions, I've given you a data set to show you what averages look like, and then I tell you what I'm planning to use in the model. For example, with CPI, the past 5-year average is 2%. Now, we know it's running high right now, but we don't know where it's going to land. And so I'll go ahead and do the model at 2%, but in the middle of January, we'll get that new number, and then I'll replace it once I know what it actually is, and then I'll be able to give you an update. In the meantime, you'll be able to estimate the update because, say for example, it comes in at 3% instead of 2%. You can see that I've given you a CPI sensitivity. That means you would get $500,000 more than what 2% would have brought you. So that's how you use that plus or minus on the CPI. Plus or minus 1% is about $500,000. With new EAV growth, again, I've given you the data set. I'll be using $9 million for all projected years. That sensitivity is a lot less than the CPI sensitivity. That's only plus or minus $1 million at 53,000. So that's, that you can get a little bit closer. CPPRT is Corporate Personal Property Replacement Tax. It's a tax that's still on the Illinois books from when the law went into effect. Our district is one of a few districts. We don't get very much of it because we don't have a lot of retail. And so it really is only about 280,000 on average over 5 years, and that's the number I'll be using to populate the model. I've given you our state and federal revenue numbers and the averages for those. Recommendation then, I'll be using 11.5 for state and 1.6 for federal for all years. Again, state money in particular, it does not fluctuate much, but we don't generally learn what it is until the middle of summer. And then even now, I'm still waiting to hear the final number for the transportation claim reimbursement. And so we have to use estimates in most of our processes for budgeting. Those are the significant revenue assumptions that I'll be using in the model that you'll see the results of next week. At this time, are there any questions on the revenue side?
So I have a question. So the current economic climate, with the current economic climate, we're seeing deviations from the norm, or potentially seeing
Adam?
deviations from the norm.
Is your microphone on?
Can you hear me?
No.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
With the current economic climate, we're potentially seeing deviations from the norm, given, you know, everything that's going on in the world. Are you accounting, using the past 5 years historical data, to me, it's not necessarily reflective of what is going to happen going forward. Is there any accounting for that with both the CPI and the EAV?
Sure. I will start with the 5-year average, but then in January, we will learn the next year's CPI that will populate the 23-24 fiscal year. And as soon as I know that number, I switch it out.
Okay, you had mentioned that, and that's a real number.
That's a real
Okay,
number.
gotcha.
And then that moves up then the rest of the 4 numbers. The other 4 numbers will stay at 2%.
Okay.
Because what we don't know is how long is it going to be an increased inflation? Is it going to be 1 year or multiple years?
Right.
And so I would rather err on the side of conservatism with regard to budgeting to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a position where we're super over expending what we bring in. And that could happen if you get too far ahead of yourself with the CPI in
No, that makes
particular.
sense. Okay.
And then with regard to the new growth, again, we can use a 5-year average and it can fluctuate. But if it fluctuates by $1 million or $2 million, which if you look at that, it really, your spread is between 6.6 and 11. That's $5 million. So your impact on the budget at $5 million is probably about $250,000.
Right. Okay.
So it's not it's significant, but not enough to move away from the average unless if you absolutely knew what was going to happen.
Okay.
So especially too, it goes up and down. It went 6, 7, 11, 10, 9.
Right.
So it could very well go up again. It just really depends. So we'll use the average. If we learn something new, we'll update it at that time.
Okay. Thank
Okay, you bet. The CPI is more important than the new growth. Okay, moving on to the expenditure side of the assumptions. There are 5 significant expenditure assumptions that we use in the model. Starting with staffing. The first thing that I do is I take a look at where we're at and where we've been in terms of raises. So I've got your historical data there. Most recently in our model, the board has wanted me to use the same number that I use for CPI for salaries. When I know what a raise is going to be, a salary increase, I'll use the actual. But we're nearing the end of some of our employment contracts. And so with that being said, I'll put in a number that is 2% because that's the same as the CPI number. Another method that we've used prior to that would be to put in 0% because then that would show you what's left over. But 2% is what we've been most recently using, and so I plan to use that for staffing. With regard to increased FTEs, we will be working, or I will be working with the cabinet to determine what years new FTEs will be needed, specifically related to the Ignite Academy. And so those will be added to the model. We can look at the model with and without those FTEs. Additionally, every year we know that we do some changes just because of needed with our operations. For example, at the last board meeting, we really needed some new counselors at the high school, and so we do take care of our student needs first and then move and work within the budget throughout that process. The second piece of expenditures is the new curriculum materials adoption. That number has gone up and down and fluctuated over time. My preference is I plan to start where they want to be, which is $400,000 a year for new curriculum. And that's following a 7-year, I believe, or I can't remember if they're on a 7-year or 10-year, I'll have to check, curriculum cycle. Dr. Lane, do you remember that?
It's between those numbers for sure. I think it might be, I think it's 8.
8?
But I'm not 100% sure, but there is a regular ongoing curricular review.
Yeah, because we've had to push it out a couple times, so I'm not sure where we're at right now with it, because we got behind.
Yes.
And so I'd like to keep it on track at 400,000. Again, these are numbers that once we see the results of these numbers, we can adjust them as needed in order to make sure that the final bottom line is where the board wants to be. Technology, this is what I think you were referring to, Ryan. I'm going to announce it tonight. I announced it before, but Tim Wolf, our technology director, got a very large $1.5 million technology grant. That grant needs to be spent by the end of this current year. The purpose of the grant has 3 purposes in it. One is to replace all of the Chromebooks, 3,100 of them, so that next year all the students would have new Chromebooks. There is money in that grant for Wi-Fi on our school buses, and so they've ordered one to try it, and then once they know what it's going to take, then they'll order the rest. That is going to be wonderful because it's not only going to give our students access to Wi-Fi, but we'll be able to do some enhanced camera usage and GPS tracking. So there's just extra benefits of having that Wi-Fi on the school buses.
So all of the school buses?
As of right now, yes, unless if we learn something different.
And then is that something that can be, as we cycle through buses, is that something that can be taken off of one bus and moved to the next?
I believe so.
Okay.
Because it's an installation of a device, so I believe yes.
And you didn't want to give Tim that announcement earlier today when we do salutes?
You know what? We'll make sure that we do that at some point because I think that that's really important. Thank you. And then the third piece of that is all of the teacher laptops. The grant includes up to $400 per device for teacher laptops. So I believe that next week or in January, we will have a plan for how that's going to help us. And I think we'll probably be using some of the ESSER money because that's what it's for, is to help with technology. And so the teacher laptops, currently in last year's 5-year projections, I had it split over 2 years for a replacement cycle. But given the grant that he just got, we may not need to, well, we won't need to do that because they will get replaced with this. One thing that I did talk with Tim about that I think it's important for the board to think about, which I'm not concerned about because I know Tim has a plan, but whenever you get a large sum of money and you spend it, for example, on technology, all that technology wears out at the same time. And so it's going to be our job to make sure that we make it sustainable because you don't want to bring something in that you can't sustain into the future. So he and I are having those conversations about what does that look like and when will that need to be replaced so that we plan accordingly. It's wonderful to get it, but then you need to be able to sustain it. So please know that we're on that.
Dr. Fuchs, really quick, when you said year, did you mean calendar year or school year or academic year?
Fiscal year.
Okay.
His grant needs to be spent by June of '22, so we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Number 4, the next significant portion are school buses. This current year, we only bought 2 one year in order to try to squeeze the budget because we knew that it was trending the wrong way. At this point, I am going to still recommend replacing 5 school buses. I do have a separate bus report, either for next meeting or January, we'll see. But we do have some buses now that won't pass the lane that are just sitting, and so we want to make sure that we replace those, plus a couple extra that are in pretty rough shape. So hopefully we can do that this year with 5 one-year-old buses. And then capital projects is something that we've been working on that you approved tonight. And we did go up above what we've ever done before at $2 million. And so that will need to be taken into consideration. And what I am planning to do until I know what we can handle is to do the $2 million for 22-23 and then take it back to $1 million for all future years, because I know that we can sustain the $1 million, but we really needed a boost this year in capital projects. That Ignite Academy that I talked about is opening, or scheduled to open August of '23. And the cabinet, along with Laura Garland, the personalized learning coordinator, are working hard to determine what the needs are for that academy. And so as we learn that information and it becomes more clear, that will all be taken into consideration in our financial projection model. So next meeting, I will present to you what I consider to be the results. You can see where we're at. We can talk about these variables and where we, if we need to, where we might shift some things. We can also talk about what else you would like to see in terms of direction, if there are any ideas. And then we can continue to plan. This time of the year, it gets very busy financially in the sense that, for example, the capital projects, Mr. Payton really takes the lead on that now that the board has said okay. He's working with the architect. We're getting bid packages together. That'll go on my calendar, his calendar, and we'll be moving forward. I assume that the board will approve some form of school bus replacement. Our director of transportation will work on that. Tim's working on the grant with technology, getting that all set up. So even though next year's budget doesn't start till July 1, a lot of the work that goes into it is happening right now at the meetings and in between the board meetings. At the next meeting, if you'll recall, in addition to the financial projections, we will do the tax levy hearing and get the tax levy taken care of and filed. That's our last opportunity to do that. And so that'll be filed in December on time, and we'll be moving forward with the 22-23 budget planning. So hopefully that gives you what you need to just start thinking about the big budget in terms of getting planned, and then I will give you more information at the next meeting. Are there any questions?
So it does look like you have a recommendation here. You'd like us to vote on this?
I do have one. Thank you.
Okay. So if there are no questions for Dr. Fuchs, I'll entertain a motion that the board directs the administration to use the recommendations presented as assumptions when planning for the 2022 through 2026 5-year financial projections.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons. Aye. Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Move on now to J2, which is the Safety Tip Hotline information.
Yes, if you recall from the October 25th board meeting, one of the topics for future agenda was to learn more and provide an update about our Safety Tip Hotline, how often it's been used, where it's located, and over the last month we've reviewed that, had some conversation, and Dr. Fuchs will take it from here, walk us through a couple of the slides, share where it's located, and we can both answer any questions that you have.
We opened the Safety Tip Hotline several years ago. I think it was around 2018. In fact, I know it was established in 2018, so it's only a couple years old. When we established it, we put a link on the main webpage. This is www.kaneland.org. You can't see it real well, but this is the main webpage. In the bottom right-hand corner, all the way down, there's a little yellow triangle, and it says Safety Concern and Tip Form. That link is on the main page as well as all of our school pages. And so I'm just going to go to one of the schools and show you that, because it's on the school pages, it's in the bottom left-hand corner. Let's dismiss this here. Uh-oh. Did I do it wrong? Hang on. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to go back. I think I clicked on the strategic plan. I wanted to dismiss. There we go. All right. As we scroll down to the bottom, again, same link, looks the same, but it's on the left-hand side instead of the right. And so with this, it is accessible to all students, staff, parents, community members, anybody that has access to our website. When you click on that link, you get a page called Safety Tips. And then the first thing it talks about is our Safety Tip Hotline. With the Safety Tip Hotline, you can call it, you can text it, or you can email it. Or you can use the form below. So it's fairly accessible via any method that a person would want to report a safety tip. So, Safety Tip Hotline. Typically, it would be used by anybody that wants to share their concern with administration. The goal then would be for the administration to follow up on that concern. The tip hotline, depending on which, if they happen to mark a box with a school, it may go to a different set of people. But generally, there's one group of people that gets all of them. And so as soon as a tip comes in, we are all texting and trying to figure out, is it real? Who does it need to go to? And what are we going to do with it? And that all typically happens within the first 5 minutes of receiving that tip. Even sometimes when they come overnight, our tech director will catch it and then start calling until he gets somebody to wake up and respond. So that is part of the Safety Tip Hotline here. I'm going to scroll down. The form is right there. It's very easy. You type in the box and tell us what you're concerned about. Did you hear something? Did you see something? And if so, what was it? And then is there a school associated with that?
Dr. Fuchs, is there a formal procedure to determine whether or not it's a viable tip, or is it more of a, you just kind of discuss it out and figure out if it's real or not?
Typically, what we do is we will call that number back, we will text it back, we will try to contact that number. That's a part of the formal process.
Okay.
And then depending on what we learn, sometimes we'll Google that number. The tech people have tools that they use. So I would consider it viable in the sense of until we know that it's not real,
Okay.
we assume it is real.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. We also have, let's see, I'm going to turn to the next page. Actually, page 3 of the memo, page 3. Each of our Kaneland schools have this poster that is displayed throughout our school buildings. It's bright yellow, and it's hung in different places. And it also at the top says, if you or someone you know feels unsafe at any of our buildings or hears a threat, please let us know. And then it's got 4. Call, text, email, stay informed, and it takes you to this website. And then again, once we get that tip, we follow up. It could be in person, via email, via phone. It just depends on what the tip is and how it's received and who wants to talk with us. And sometimes it's anonymous, and so we just have to view that as a credible threat and then start investigating that information to see if we can learn anything from that. Throughout the time, we've received 173 emails, mostly spam or alerts. We have had 10 legitimate calls and 7 legitimate text messages. And at this time, then, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on our tip line.
First, I want to thank you because I'm the one that brought this up, so I appreciate you doing the legwork behind this. As a board member, did not even realize, I knew we had this as a parent, but had no idea it was on our website, so thank you for making it known. So when somebody puts a safety tip in, you want to encourage them to put the actual person's name in, or so you guys can. The reason this came up was I've had some parents that had, like, their kids have said something to them, or a friend has said something to their kids. We obviously want to encourage the actual person that this is happening to put it on the safety tip line. But if they're too afraid to do that, is it okay if a parent enters it for them, or another student speaks on behalf of another student? Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right. The only reason I ask that is because I've had, just one example was one student, didn't go through this, went through a different channel and was told, I can't speak to you, I need to actually speak to the other person. So I just want to make sure that parents and other students know this is a way, and if it stays anonymous, because some kids are afraid to put their name on it, that you guys will still pursue it. So it's not like an end game, you guys would still continue. Thank you. I'm impressed with the 5-minute response rate, or average. That's great to know too. The question I have, it's not just, what do you consider a safety concern? It's bullying. It's not just like somebody's carrying a knife or there's a threat to the school. Are there other things that you guys consider safety concerns? I guess I just wanted to define, how do you want the safety tip line to be used compared to, like, if a student or a parent has a concern with a teacher or some other, what avenues do you want people to use this compared to actually, like, reaching out to the superintendent or reaching out to a teacher, so we can define what that looks like?
Our goal has been the safety and welfare of students and staff. So that's kind of the baseline. So if it's on the hot lunches, if it's on playing time, those kind of things that parents have commented on at times or had questions on, those would be things we'd say this is really not for the safety tip hotline. It can be used in a different, go through a different source to get there. So it'd be more the safety and wellness of our students and staff. So when people enter that, like Dr. Fuchs said, Dr. Fuchs, Mr. Wolf, our Director of Technology, and myself get all of those. We look at them, then we determine, does it go to the building principal? Does it go to a counselor, social worker? Do one of us call them? So it's more about the safety and welfare of students. It could be based on a threat. It could be one of their friends aren't doing very well. One of their friends made a threat to self. Those kind of things. So anything that comes up that would be safety or welfare of our students, we immediately follow up.
Something I might want to add to this, in addition to the safety tip hotline, we also have monitoring software called Gaggle, and that monitors all emails that go in and out, as well as Canvas. And so those tips come in more frequently because that is something where it's not a specific, hey, I want somebody to know. It catches concerns of students from those vehicles or from those media. So,
and the students know about that too.
They
They're well
do.
informed.
Yep. And we follow up on each of those just as if it were real and incredible and all of those things as well. We've had some really good luck with some of those where it's really helped a lot. I'll just kind of leave it at that.
My only last question that I had on this was, because you guys, I knew about Gaggle, and that's been very helpful. That's actually been a very bigger resource for you guys. So the safety hotline, when you implemented it in 2018, so far you've had 17. Now, that's 17 important ones, but is that what you were expecting? Were you expecting a bigger number, or was there, when you decided to do this platform? The reason I ask is the communication, if I look at 17 after how many years now, that doesn't seem like a big number to me. So is this communicated well enough to parents and to students and to teachers? Is this meeting your expectation, I guess is what I'm asking. Like I said, I know you guys have other levels of way of finding other safety issues, or kids can report things. Just wondering, is this meeting its expectation?
One of the things we had talked about when we were doing this and reviewing it was how can we make sure that we're regularly communicating? So obviously at the beginning of the school year, and then with students as staff as issues come up. But one of the other things we identified was just making sure under the superintendent report every 3 or 4 months, just as a reminder, just sharing it again and just talking about it so that it's on our, we're not necessarily doing it to let the board know that we have it, because the board knows, but it's just more to make sure that it's noted at a public meeting at some point, so in case somebody's watching, it's just another reminder, and also just to make sure that we share it through the KCN and through other principal communication.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
Is there, do you differentiate this from, say, like I mean, there's other systems, right? Like there's the safety to help kind of thing that you can call, right? And that's just like a statewide thing, right? With a 411, right?
211, yes.
Or 211, sorry,
Yes,
yeah. So,
that's okay.
So like, how do you help the students navigate that? As a grown-up, I'm already like, which one do I go to, right? So how do you help the students do that?
I think one of the most important messages is if a student needs help or feels unsafe, it doesn't matter which system they use, just use a system and let an adult know.
Sure.
And then we'll take it from there.
That's good.
And as far as
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if they call 211 and the people there, the counselors and that online, they will bring it back to the school if it's something that we can help with. Okay. If it's something that they need help with outside of school, they'll figure that out. Us too, if there's something here that is beyond us, we'll seek out professional help as well with our, we have partnerships with the local police and counselors and systems. So I think the main message is if there's somebody that needs assistance, please reach out and let an adult know, whatever method they feel most comfortable.
Sure, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Very good. Okay. That concludes new business for tonight. We'll move on to the superintendent and board report. Dr. Layden?
Yes, thank you, President Witt. I do have a few. The Hall of Fame Committee meets 4 times a year. Our next meeting is coming up Wednesday night. Board member Mankivsky is our representative on the Hall of Fame. So that agenda went out today, and the primary goal of the December Hall of Fame meeting is to review the nominee packets, which are due on Wednesday. So Hall of Fame nominations need to be turned in by Wednesday. The committee reviews the packets on that date, and just to make sure that they're full packets, and then we vote on February as far as any new inductees to the Hall of Fame. We also have a meeting scheduled for next week on the 12th. It's for the Kaneland Foundation. That's to continue to talk about possible fundraising opportunities and any grants or grantees that is taking place within the foundation itself. Then the last thing I wanted to share was on our weekly Kane County Health Department call, we do have, for the first time, a meeting scheduled next Friday with Dr. Ngazi Nzike. That's the first time we've had the opportunity to have a meeting and a webinar. So they've encouraged us to ask questions, bring ideas, and formulate that idea. And again, it's the first time, so I don't know if it'll be a webinar in which information is shared or how much give and take there will be, and we'll be able to share thoughts or questions or ideas that we have directly to her. And then the last thing I would share, Dr. Fuchs, today as we send out our regular daily update on the positivity rates and cases, not the rates, but the number of cases. There were 20 cases that went out, and may be alarming to some and may make some people nervous, but please remember that the That is the last time it's gone out since the 19th, so that's over 10 days. So while one time looking at it, seeing such a large number, that's over 10 days, and the actual number of close contacts today was 58. So with 20 cases and only 58 close contacts, that number is lower than it was on November 19th, which also had 20 cases. That one had, I think, 75 close contacts. So the number of students that are excluded based on close contacts is actually down over the last week. Dr. Fuchs, did you
Yeah,
have
we
something?
did announce one on the 22nd, one on the 23rd.
Okay.
Yep, but after that,
Yep.
it's.
I forgot about those because students weren't in
Yeah.
attendance.
How does that compare to last year generally?
That's a
Last-
great, yes.
Last year, we were in a much different situation, right?
Yes, last year at this time, I think we had 5 staff members as of today that were out either with positive or close contact. Last year at this time, we were at about 80, and we needed to move to an adaptive pause.
Right.
So we are in a much better place, even with the Delta variant and the new variant and any conversations going on countywide. We're still in a good place and able to operate.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. And that was all I had for superintendent report.
I don't have anything for tonight, thank you.
Okay. So I had a couple of things. The first one is that I just wanted to check in with board members to see, we have a fairly large update to our press policies, you know, the first where we do it on first reading. What is it? If it's printed at regular font, you said it's over 300 pages?
Yes, it's 163 pages at about a 6 font right now. So it's, if we printed it at regular, it would be about 300 pages for an update. I'm not sure why they're so heavy. I'm still working my way through it. There's some that are new and some that are just 5-year reviews.
So since this is a procedural change, I just wanted to check to see, a lot of the changes, as you know, are language changes or they are requirements by law or by statute. And so in order to move things along and not be sitting here for hours and hours and hours on first reading, we thought that we would, you know, the packet will go out and you'll have everything to read before the meeting, but we'll only have Dr. Layden go over the things where we actually have an active choice to make. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds great to me.
Thank you.
So you've got that direction.
Yes, thank you.
The other thing,
Sorry, Teresa, just.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, but our lawyer, Mrs. Lemon, she'll still go through those, right?
Yeah.
And footnote which ones? So we
Yeah,
can
the ones
always
that
go back and
have,
look at
the ones that'll
footnotes.
say, because if you recall at the bottom, what they do is say you need to take action on it or consult your attorney. For any of those that we have questions on, I'll make sure we do that due diligence.
Okay, I just wanted, I figured we were there, I just wanted to say it out loud.
Yes.
Especially for our
yeah.
audiences at home.
Yeah, I mean, it is policy, it is what we do, it's important, but the small language changes, we'll be able to review those ahead of time. And anyone can bring those up, you know, during the discussion, but
Yes.
if needed. Okay, so 3 board members and 3 administrators went to the joint annual conference the weekend before Thanksgiving. And we were all going to share a little bit about what we learned. It's the one time that board members go and participate in a lot of professional development. And we expect professional development ongoing by our staff and our administrators. And so it's only right that board members would keep current on things. And so one way to do it is at the annual conference. So I'm going to go ahead and share what my classes that I attended. I'll just give you a real quick overview, and then Adam can do his. And then if administrators want to share theirs, that would be great too. So I attended 2 conferences 2 workshops on Friday. The first one was called Bridging What Divides Us. It was okay. It wasn't the best. It was kind of about listening skills, and I didn't feel like there was a lot of new information, but it was just about finding common ground. It was good to go over it again, and it was a worthwhile workshop, but like I said, there wasn't any new information. The second one I attended was an equity workshop, and it was nice to be in a room with a lot of diversity, I felt, discussing equity. And the way it was presented, there was a timeline of laws and things like that had restricted equity and inclusion that they went over, and then there was open discussion and questions and answers, and I found that to be very, very useful. One thing it was given by the IASB, and they are starting their own equity audit, service, so there was a little bit of an ad at the end, but the facilitator was great, and it was actually a good discussion. So then in the Saturday conferences or sessions, quicker sessions, I went to one about transitions. That's kind of about lining up administrators so that if you have somebody leave, somebody's kind of on deck. It's a little easier said than done, I think. It'd be nice to be able to do it that way, but you have personalities and you have, certifications and things that are different, and amounts of experience. So where we could do that would be a good thing. I think you guys already, have that in mind when you're hiring. The one I enjoyed the most was the top 10 legal mistakes that boards of education make, and I'm going to run them down really quick. We don't make a lot of them, which is a good thing. One was about closed session. We are very strict about not discussing in closed session anything that we are not allowed to. And when it drifts that way in closed session, just so everybody here knows, we actually bring it back around and we say, nope, can't talk about that. So we only talk about the items that are allowed under the Open Meetings Act. They talked about coaching and volunteering and substitute teaching in the district. You can't do that. Emailing, reply all to the full board, because that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. They talked about firings, and basically just, doing things improperly. Public comment, they, said we need to treat everyone the same. They said not to discuss anything, not to respond, but then respond after the fact like we have been doing in email. So we're always trying to, stay on top of that. Student discipline matters, staying with Senate Bill 100, same thing with expulsions. Number 8 was opening public meetings of the public body with prayer. It's prohibited. Controversial issues about things like curriculum items that people don't agree with, and that they're actually, according to this law firm, there's no specific right to opt your child out of those things unless it's a specific violation of a protected right. And then the last one was that the board is an entity and not just 7 individuals. We have a fiduciary responsibility. It's to the entire district, and that board members, they discourage board members from speaking and making public statements without the consent and discussion with the rest of the board. So I thought those were interesting. It's interesting to hear another law firm's take. That's not our law firm. It was given by another one. So that was my experience, and it was very valuable. So, Adam, what did you?
So I found the whole experience to be very valuable, especially as a new board member. Friday, I did the trust experience, which was really, I felt like it was both beneficial in this arena as well as my professional life, just building trust with your customers, your constituents all around, and so that one was beneficial. I'll admit that the goal setting session was not. I think part of it was our table. Everyone was distracted, and you have to work together with these things, but still there were some good takeaways. Most of my Saturday was locked up with the delegate assembly, which was very valuable. It was interesting to watch these districts from all over the state, both rural and urban, debate the different topics that I had brought up to you guys and to see the different perspectives. I was watching the votes as they came in, and I was marking them down, and to be honest, if it's okay with you guys, I'd be happy to be the delegate ambassador for the group. I'll take on that task for my term, at least, because it's something that I feel like I can embrace. I enjoyed it, and
I think it's something, it probably needs to be brought up every year in case someone else wanted to do it.
Sure.
But usually that's not the case.
well, and I was discussing
with that you embrace that.
I was discussing with Dr. Layden. I kind of want to challenge us to maybe come up with something we'd like to submit on our own. I know we got a lot on our plate right now, but I think it's a good way for us to work together and come up with something to utilize the resource. So anyway, that was that. It was interesting. If you guys ever want the data, I have it all written down. I took pretty copious notes. I think the most valuable sessions was there was one session on having student ambassadors and basically involving students in the board meetings that I found to potentially be beneficial. I think we don't hear from the students enough. And that's a whole group that I think could add value. Obviously, they won't have, in terms of a vote, they don't really have the power. But I think it's good to include them and to get their perspective on things. So, maybe down the line I'll bring that up and see how you guys feel. And I'd say the most valuable one is that we had I went to a new board member session. We had an open discussion, and all these people, most of us, we were elected at the same time, and we're all facing the same issues. And we're all being, kind of thrust into an environment that's not the norm and having to adapt. And so it was nice to hear from others that they're experiencing the same issues that we're seeing, and so it was nice to have an open discussion, and everybody has not problems, but we all have our obstacles that we've had to overcome. It was good to hear, how some districts handled it. It was nice to hear that there are districts where it made me feel like we're managing really well. I think when I came back and looked at how things function here, I was proud and felt relieved to realize that the setup that we currently have is very structured compared to what other boards have. So that was a good takeaway. I think it was a kudos to the administration and to the board. So yeah, and then just the whole experience of understanding what the IASB's role is, the resources that they have to offer, and how we can utilize them as board members, I thought was valuable.
Great. We'll give Board Member Junk, when she's here if she's here at the next meeting, she can share if she would like.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. From the administrative perspective, I attended, Dr. Fuchs attended, and Dr. Atkins attended. I'll share first the sessions I went to. I also attended the equity session just as an opportunity while we have our equity audit going on. Just as an update there, we'll be meeting later on with the CEC later this week, looking at some of our results, and we'll be providing that in a January update to the board. So that was good to see another firm or another vendor, how they talk about it and what they talk about. I also attended, as President Witt did, the principal training and transition session. That one was really interesting to me as far as the hiring piece, and then looking for, while the position's hired, not necessarily a replacement, but what is your internal grooming, what is your internal training? Because a lot of times, the way administrators are structured, they have their job to do, and they don't get a chance to see other jobs as well. So the challenge is how they can do their job, whether it's an assistant principal, a dean, department chairperson, or a principal, how they can do their job and do it well, and also at the same time be trained for transition times if and when they're planned. We don't always have planned transition times, but when we have planned transitions, to be able to make it more seamless is always a goal. Another one that I attended was on passing a referendum. That one was interesting to hear at district, how they planned a referendum, brought it to the community, it failed, didn't do well. They did some time to self-reflect, redesign what they did, how they messaged it, and how they worked with their community to try to learn more and be on the same page, and ended up passing it the second time. So valuable lessons there. And then one of the other ones I attended was on fostering positive team relationships. When we have regularly groups of people working together, whether it's the board team, administrative team, teacher teams, student teams, activities, actual teams themselves, athletic teams, different traits and strengths that you see in successful teams as opposed to teams that don't do well, and how can you enhance those and spend time fostering the traits and characteristics that make teams positive. So obviously a lot to take away for all of us, but to be able to find a couple of them that were especially informative and find a couple nuggets here or there, it's always a good conference to go to. Dr. Poops?
Thank you. I went to the same communication session that you spoke of, the Bridging the Gap, and I found it also valuable just to, nothing really new, but just reviewing some of the active listening concepts. I thought that it was good to take a few minutes just to review that. I went to a session on Saturday on ESSER, the ESSER dollars, and learned what other districts are doing with it. We're in a similar place as others. Most of us, the districts, have spent all of their ESSER 1 money, which we have. I've got ESSER 2 in the revenue budget, and we'll be expending that this year, primarily on PPE, which is pretty similar technology. And then ESSER 3 is the big one, and a lot of districts are looking at some HVAC and some systems kinds of things with that. Everybody's trying to avoid using that money for positions because of sustainability. Also, the fact that it's federal dollars, there's an additional 10% that you have to pay on certified staff, and so that's not a good use of federal money. So I felt good about the ESSER, where we're at and where we're headed with it. Another one I went to was the legal review. It was different than the one you went to, but it was still good. This one, we talked a lot about COVID and that it's not going away, and there are battles in the courts on a lot of the challenges that we're experiencing, and just hang on because it's not over yet kind of thing. There's very little prediction of who's going to win, but what we were told is this has been a time period where education has been the political football per se, more so than these two attorneys had ever seen or experienced previously. So I thought that that was interesting when you talk about being a new board member and getting thrown in. It not only is it new and different for you, it is for us as well. So that was, I think, valuable. The last one I went to was on school security. That was with Paul Tim. Paul's been out here and worked with our staff before. He's written the book, School Security in Schools. He too wants to make sure that during COVID that we pay attention still to security best practices, starting with masks and identifying kids and making sure we know who's in our buildings. And so he reviewed some of those basic principles for school security. So again, very valuable. As I lead our district task force for security, we are regularly talking about those kinds of issues. And so that was very helpful to hear Paul speak again. So thank you.
An interesting comment on the two people that led your legal thing, saying they hadn't seen anything. That's a significant thing to say for those two gentlemen because they've been around for quite some time.
Yes, they're very experienced school attorneys. Thank you. And that is so true. So, yeah.
Dr. Adkins, do you want to share?
Thank you. So likewise, I also attended the Bridging What Divides Us and the equity sessions on Friday. In addition to those two, I also attended a session called What's Race Got to Do with It, held by Dr. Whitaker, who was in our Bridging the Equity Gap session on Friday. And I did hear a common trend there of inquiry-based communication, inquiry-based conversation, and definitely got some sentence stems to utilize with staff, with parents, with the community members, just to make sure that you're understanding where people come from as you begin to work with them or develop relationships with them. And so it was interesting. We went through an exercise in the What's Race Got to Do With It activity where Dr. Whitaker, who I've heard about and read some of her work, and I both realized we're both military brats and had a deep, strong connection there with that experience growing up as young adults with military parents. Kind of had an opportunity to geek out a little bit and go to the legal review with Dr. Fuchs. It's interesting that the subtitle of it is "You Can't Make This Stuff Up," and that's very true. There's a lot of just unknowns right now. They did also talk a little bit about personnel shortages, which as your HR director I can absolutely understand from a direct level. And then the final session I went to was on again, geeking out, all the changes to FMLA, the impacts on a system, rights and privileges of the individual staff member, as well as the system, how to identify those that might need FMLA, how to protect the district from fraud, a whole variety of issues. That was presented by two attorneys as well, a much younger gentleman with maybe some specific experience with FMLA, but nonetheless, in our role, we have a significant need to know exactly what's going on with FMLA so we can help our staff the best. So it's a great opportunity, and I really appreciated our time learning together, so thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for sharing. I had one other thing to share, and that is that I have been summoned to jury duty on the next meeting date. So, I may call in and they may say I don't have to go, or I may be dismissed and done by 3, but if I'm not, if I'm chosen and I have to stay, then Board Member Junk, Vice President Junk would run the meeting, and if she's not available, then it would go to Mr. Carey. So, fingers crossed. I will tell you that I don't have a good track record for getting out of it. I have been summoned 2 or 3 times, and I've been chosen 2 or 3 times. So, anyway, all right. So that's all I had. Any other board members? Do I see on here an FAC meeting?
Not until December 9th. So I guess that is before the first board meeting, or the next board meeting.
Okay.
So yeah, just Thursday, December 9th.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Topics for future agendas.
Not a topic for the agenda, but for an update. I've kind of lost track of time on this one, but I had asked about the district teaching Spanish and a review as to whether or not that was the right language to be teaching. So if you could just update us on where we are on that process. And then one other one, if we could just see some sort of numbers on how effective the test to stay is in the weekly or monthly update would be appreciated.
Are those both doable?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
That was loud.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Okay. This is the second opportunity for public comment. Do I have anyone signed up? I do not. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment with the same rules that applied earlier? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We do have a closed session tonight to discuss Section 2C2 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act, which deals with collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees. And we do not anticipate any action after that closed session. So after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. So now I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.